Welcome to the virtual forum presented by Southern States Management Group. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight. We appreciate you guys taking the time with us and thank you so much for wanting to be more educated as board members. Southern States believes that a more educated board member, the more beneficial you are as a neighbor and a community leader. So we thank you for seeing the value in education and for being with us tonight. My name is Diane. I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator, and I will just be going over some housekeeping really quickly. Tonight's agenda, we are honored to have Harley Cooper, one of our prize community managers, with us. He'll be talking about the bid process. But I just wanted to go over a few quick things with everyone on some just quick housekeeping. I'm going to mute everyone just so that we don't get feedback. But if you have any questions during Harley's presentation, feel free to shoot me the question, and I should show up on your screen as Southern States Management Group. The best way to shoot a question over, you can wait to the end. Harley's going to do about a 30-minute presentation, and then people can pop off or on and stay with questions. Or if you just have a question, you want to get it out and type it down during his speaking points, you can just hit the chat button. And depending on what kind of device you have, the chat button for me on my screen is at the bottom. And then you just hit chat, and then you chat with me directly, which would be the Southern States. And then I will communicate the message over to him for the end. But you can also wait till the end and ask your questions at that time. Again, I'm going to just ask that everybody stay on mute during Harley's presentation, and we appreciate that. A few things from Southern States. If you, I just got a memo as a public service announcement. Our answering service, our 24-hour answering service, sent out a public service announcement to all of their clients today, just letting them know that a lot of their clients live in Texas. And so if you have been watching the news, you know that, they've been dealing with a lot of horrific weather. So if you're having any troubles or challenges with our answering services, or you hear that from any of your community members, we appreciate the patience in getting back with you as efficiently as possible and as quickly as possible. With our educational programs, I just wanted to highlight that we have our HOA and our COA certification and conference coming up on April 28th and 29th at the Museum of Arts and Sciences, the C.C. and Hyatt Brown Museum, the new museum in Daytona Beach. You are all more than welcome to attend. We ask that you also let other board members know about this amazing two-day event. I actually worked very hard today on the schedule of events, and I just want to give a few quick highlights of some of the topics that will be discussed. We have how to run and manage a successful election virtually and in person, adoption of rules and architectural criteria, how to clean up financials, how to have a solid collections process. We also will certify all board members attending that day. And it's a two-day event. So we have the Homeowners Association on one day, and we have the Condominium Association on another day. That gives us the opportunity to provide a safe space for, enough exhibitors and distance between you and fellow board members. But always go on to our website under the Education tab to sign up for any of these programs. But that's coming up in April, and that will certify you, which is required under Florida statute, as a board member. So that'll be wonderful. It's a full day event. We have sponsors that provide breakfast, lunch. We'll do a happy hour. We have lots of snacks in between, coffee bar. We'll have a bunch of exhibitors there that are ready to, talk to you in a safe manner about their services locally. And then the closing remarks, we're excited to have Sheriff Chitwood, who will be joining us, and he'll be talking about safety precautions for your community. And we all know that in times like this, it's always great to have a solid community plan and to understand what safety really looks like from his perspective in our counties, or in Volusia County for his purposes. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to, well, first, I'm sorry, there's a disclaimer. By being involved in this platform, you are authorizing permission for this to be videotaped and uploaded to our website. Additionally, we ask that no reproduction or use of this video may be made without prior written consent. And I will be sending out an email with the video to all. So if you have board members that weren't able to attend tonight, you can share that with them, or as always, direct them to our website, which is where it will be as well. And again, Harley Cooper is one of our community association managers. He's also a licensed real estate agent with Southern States Realty Services. He's been with Southern States for over 3 years. He's originally from New Smyrna Beach, which I love. He has very strong ties to our community and the businesses in our community. I love the fact that he's an avid cycler and kayaker. He's also very much involved with youth soccer as a coach for over 15 years. And of course, he's a huge supporter of local nonprofit organizations like Realtors Sold for the Cause, New Smyrna Beach High School Athletics, and Mainland High School Athletics. So Harley is one of our rock stars, and we're thankful to have him here tonight. So I'll pass the mic over to Harley and stop talking.
Hey, thanks, Diane. Can everybody hear me okay? You go in there. I don't know who she's talking about. I never have time for any of those things anymore. Really quickly, thank you for those of you who all showed up today. The only one I believe that I've ever met here out of attendance is Mr. Corbett, who's a president at one of my associations. So welcome to the rest of you who I've never met before. I'm a portfolio manager here at Southern States. I've got 10 associations that I manage. One thing I'll tell you, if you don't already have it, you probably want to grab yourself a pen to take a couple notes. I'm not big on slides. This is my notes. So I'd rather explain it. I fall asleep during slideshows. So I use two hypotheticals when I explain the bid process to people. You should know in advance when your meetings are, and you should know what you are looking to bid. So for this hypothetical example, I'm going to assume that you're having quarterly meetings, that you're having 4 meetings a year. If you don't have 4 meetings a year scheduled, it's really hard to do any sort of bidding. So for this hypothetical, I'm going to assume quarterly meetings, a January, an April, a July, and an October. That's the best structure in my opinion, because that way, you know, your January comes, it's your first meeting, it's where you set the groundwork. Your April meeting, by that point, you should be collecting the vendors that you want to bid for. You should know what you want to bid, and you should be sending those bids out. By the July meeting, you should be ready to vote in those new vendors for next year. And by the October meeting, since you know who your vendors are going to be, then you can put your budget together based on that. Because if you don't know who your vendors are going to be for next year, and it's coming up on July, August, September already, you're going to have a really hard time adopting a budget or changing vendors because you don't know how much you're going to pay those vendors. So, you know, kind of moving along that timeline, now is when you should really be thinking about who you want to be bidding out. You need to be thinking about who it is that you pay on a recurring basis. Most of you, whether it's an HOA or a COA, you've got a landscape contract, you probably have an irrigation contract, a pool vendor. Most of you probably have a lawn fertilizer, lawn pest control vendor. You know, depending whether how structured your pool is, you may have a janitorial vendor, or you may have, if it's a condo that has some common areas that you maintain with janitorial, maybe something along that. So that's kind of getting the idea first and foremost of what you want to bid out. between now and April, between now and that second quarter meeting, you should be developing a plan for RFP, request for proposal. In my opinion, since you can't meet with a quorum of a board without a board meeting, the most efficient way is to have a committee of homeowners to review the bids. So in other words, your treasurer, of course, should be on that committee. And then think of homeowners who may attend board meetings, but don't necessarily want to be on a board. So they would be good for helping you review bids. And that way, when you send out the request for proposal in April, you can have people reviewing those bids and bringing their recommendation to the July meeting ready to go. So that at the July meeting, when the treasurer, even if nobody else from the committee shows up, let's just say it's a couple of shy homeowners that don't mind reviewing bids, but they'd rather not speak at a meeting. Everybody knows those neighbors. If they can get together, review the bids, and then the treasurer speak at that July meeting to be able to say, you know, here's the 4 pool vendors that bid, this one is our recommendation. So that in that July meeting, there shouldn't be all the long-winded discussion as to, well, you know, how much more can we get back? And I'll go into proposals later on. In those RFP, you should invite the vendors to come out and, I'll go in. So basically what you're looking for in an RFP, there's a lot of, some of this stuff they have to put in there. Some vendors know some of these things you have to put in. Some of them are just good to throw in the proposal and ask them to bid on. So they have to have their name and contact information, obviously, but if they don't put their email on it, if they don't have a billing address, you know, especially with landscapers, the billing address may be different than the address, you know, where they're servicing from. They should have references. They should be okay sharing references with you. If they don't, that's probably a bad sign. Their business ID, tax ID, proof of insurance should be included in the bids so that you can look them up, make sure they're legit, and make sure that they've you know, that they're a licensed business. The bid should have the length of the contract on it. Oftentimes, especially with smaller companies, with smaller landscapers especially, they'll just give you a bid if you ask them for a bid, but they may not specify how long the bid is. So it's probably better to at least have it. I like to have a 2-year bid. And that way you won't have to worry about bidding them out the next year. It should have in it whether it auto renews. If it does not auto renew, then it should have in it what the escalation clauses are for the rates, so that you can know in advance, so you don't get the surprise. There's a fertilizer company in town, I won't say the name of, that if it does not say otherwise, they've got a 5% escalation clause in their rate every year. So unless you know that and it expires, you know it's going to go up. So just make sure you know in advance what those are. Another good thing to have is cancellation clauses on both ends. Don't, make sure that if it goes south between you and the vendor, that both of you have a way out. 30 days is pretty standard, but just make sure that both of you have a way to terminate the contract if anything goes south, especially with a new vendor, because you don't always know what you're getting into. The biggest problem with vendor bidding is this one right here, the scope of service. So let's say you're bidding out the landscaper, the guy that mows your lawns in your common areas, or for some of you mows all the lawns. If you get one bid and it says he's going to mow the lawn 40 times in a year with no mowings, with mowing every other week, during those other 12 weeks. And you get another bid, and in the other bid, it says he's going to mow 36 times and every other week, those other 6 weeks. That's their professional opinion. So don't get hung up when you're reviewing the bids of saying, well, you know, what if this person is willing to cut 4 mows off to be the same price as this guy? Remember that they're professionals in their business. I have a hard time telling vendors, hey, why don't you cut a couple mowings off to save money? And then when the phone calls start coming in at the end of that mowing cycle of why is my lawn a foot high, just understand that when you're asking them to bid, you're asking them to put their reputation on the line for the price and service they're offering you. If somebody else is willing to do that apples to apples comparison for the same price, then that's good. Just understand that if you get caught up on trying to make every bid the same, you're never going to get to a conclusion. Yeah, you'll spend 6 months reviewing bids and going back and asking why one of them uses this kind of fertilizer, uses granular, and the other uses liquid. Whatever they bid on it, they do. Invite them to come to the association. Whoever's on the committee should be willing to meet with the vendors, especially if they have, if you have one committee member and the pool is their favorite thing, the community pool is all they care about. That's a good person to meet every potential pool vendor to find out how often they're going to come. Are they going to come 3 days a week or 4 days a week? You know, that sort of thing. And the other thing to look for on the contract, and it's something that people leave out on accident and then it causes hard feelings, is fees for additional service. If it's a pool vendor, we'll pick on pool vendors. If it's a pool vendor and it says they come 3 days a week and you have a pool emergency on a Sunday morning, are you going to get charged extra for that come out? How much is that? How much is the emergency service? How much are the emergency treatments? They should be able to answer those questions. Those are simple questions they should be able to answer. If it's a, continuing on the idea of pool vendors, it's okay to establish in advance a small number of repairs without prior approval. So let's say $200, right? Pool repairs under $200. Email us the notice, email us photos, let us know what it was that broke, but don't close the pool and have to go back and wait for repairs to be done if it's a skimmer basket or if it just needs extra chlorine treatment. So, you know, those are things that you can kind of avoid problems with your homeowners and problems with your community, with your common areas later on by handling those in advance. Okay, so April is hit. And by the way, for those items that you want to bid out, let's say that you want to bid out the pool, your CAM will know a lot of pool vendors. So if you don't know any pool vendors and you need recommendations, your CAM can help you with recommendations on it. If you know a particular vendor that you want them to bid, it's a-okay to ask them to bid out that vendor. If it's a vendor that you have a personal tie to, you should abstain from voting when it comes to that time. It's okay for a board member's brother to be a landscaper. But when the board member's brother bids, that board member should just abstain from any comment. And if it passes, it passes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So you've collected your bids. Your CAM got the bids, your CAM got them to the committee. Between April and July, you're reviewing the bids as a committee. You're calling those vendors back. That gives you, even on the RFP, you gave them a deadline of 30 days, whatever it is, to submit a bid. that deadline, expires. The committee's reviewing the bids. The committee has 2 months, 3 months to review those bids, narrow them down, figure out who they want, have it ready for July. In July, the bid, it's noticed on the agenda that you're voting for X number of vendors. You bid, or you vote, you have your new vendors, you have your CAM or the committee thank the ones who bid, notify the ones who were the selected bids. And in a perfect world, all vendors will start January 1st. But if you have some vendors that start mid-year because their contract picked up in, November or whatever, then that's when they overlap, but usually January. And then in October, I don't know most of you personally, but you've all probably looked at budgets that were all thrown off because the budget allowed for one vendor, and then when you changed vendors, suddenly the budget was all thrown off the next year. So if you have those vendors lined up by July, by that third meeting, then when you go into that budget adoption, you're ready to go. You know exactly what to plug in. You basically know what your assessments are going to be in July. Outside of something crazy happening, you pretty much know. So that's it. It helps you get way ahead of the game. It helps your treasurer immensely. I'm the treasurer of my association, so this is how we manage our association the same way. So I think that's just about it. Diane, are you there? And
I am.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, that was very, very quick, but informative, Harley. Thank you.
And Diane, I will give you this scan of my notes for people that couldn't write as fast as I did. So feel free to upload that as well.
We will definitely do that. So at this time, we want to open up the floor to questions. I have not received any. Harley went over that very proficiently, but for those that may have specific questions, this is a great time to ask. So feel free to maybe raise your hand, or I have to unmute you. So if anyone, okay, let me unmute John. And it's going to say, it says ask to unmute, so you should be able to unmute yourself now. There you are.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was reading some of the HOA statutes from the Florida state statutes, and I was trying to determine whether there was any minimum number of bids that you had to seek out for. Is there normally something like that where it requires a minimum of 3, and what's considered a bid if you send it out, or if you request it and then they decide not to provide you with it? I mean, do you have to find somebody who will provide you with another bid if you end up only getting one bid for your request?
Okay, so 2 numbers to write down. If you are a condominium, if you're a 718 condominium, anything that is 5% of your budget, of your operating budget, is required to be bid. If you are an HOA, if you're a 720 HOA, then it's 10% minimum of your operating budget has to be bid. There are 3 exceptions there. If it's your current rollover vendor, and let's say it became more than 5% because in the last 20 years since they've been servicing you, it's now gone up and been over 5%. If it's your current vendor with no overlap, you don't have to bid it. If it's your association management, you don't have to bid it. And if it's your legal counsel, you don't have to bid it. So those 3 things, you can choose to bid, but you don't have to bid no matter what percentage of your budget they are. And,
right.
And the other part of your question there, you have to have 3 proposals. Okay. So you reach out to 5 pool vendors, only 2 of them respond. 2 of them tell you they're going to respond and the deadline expires, and the 5th one just said no thank you, you still did your due diligence, you sent out a minimum of 3, and you have no requirement to take the low number.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question. Very good question. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Okay, who else? And anyone that I can see, you can raise your hand and I can ask to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself, hopefully, and then ask Harley a question. Okay, Michael Corbett, I think that you are on.
Yes, I am.
Thank
you. Holly, just, without getting into a lot of detail at this point, you're probably familiar with the HOA here that I'm at, Palma del Sol. And, a great percentage of the budget is obviously the landscaping budget. And that is the real focus of most of the people who live here, the homeowners. Who would provide me, is that something that you would do to provide me with vendors that might be potentially open to submitting requests for proposals?
Yes, your CAM can get you any number of vendors if you need any recommendations. And also remember those 5% and 10% numbers?
Yes.
Those were on contracted items. So like your landscape, like in your case, Mr. Corbett, your landscaper himself is an item for you, but your landscaper also does your common area tree work, and you guys do a large amount of tree work, but because he's not under contract for tree work, there's no requirement for you to bid that out. If you had him under contract for tree work, then you'd have to bid it out probably because you do a lot of tree work. But yeah, if you look on the budget, if you're from one of our managed associations, the budget's pretty well broke down so you can see the percentages and you can see what those items are.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm just getting my feet wet right now.
Yeah.
And I am perusing the budgets, as you're probably aware. And I will become more familiar with the line items as I go along.
And also, for Mr. Corbett and anybody else who doesn't know, if you are with a Southern States managed community, I'm big on pushing the website and I'm big on pushing the owner portal. Remember that the homeowner portal not only gives the homeowners the ability to check their account balance and get their governing docs and their minutes and stuff like that, but for board members have extended access beyond what homeowners have, and board members can run their own financial reports, they can do bank statements, they can check a lot of that stuff on their own in real time. So even if let's say you meet quarterly and you aren't sure what your financials are from month to month because you don't meet monthly, so you're not getting a monthly financial package, you can run those every month yourself. And your CAM can help you with that if you have any questions with it. But you just go on their website, they're pretty user friendly with the reports, and just try, like, my favorite is like balance sheet, right? You go into the reports, you go into the balance sheet, you enter it as January 31st, and it'll show you your January financial statement. So that's just kind of like an idea there.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And I will get into that.
And Mr. Corbett, this is exactly why Southern States puts together educational programs for not only, some very seasoned board members, but green board members, and also people that have been board members for a long time. Things change. The trends of this industry are constantly changing, and their dedication to funding the educational programs really does differentiate them as a management company. So you're in good hands.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to mute you. Any other questions that I can unmute? Okay, John, let's see if there's anyone else, if you don't mind, real quick, if that's okay. But thank you. Anyone else real quick? Okay, John, it's up to you. Ask to unmute. There you go.
Okay, my other
Thank you.
question was, it just, I was looking where he was talking about the, anything over 10%. Are there any exemptions for that, for like an emergency situation where you have to come into compliance with like a code enforcement violation for the community, brought against the community, where you would not have to go out for bid proposals since you're constrained by time?
Are you referring like, let's say you're a condominium and your seawall gets washed away?
Uh-huh.
Then
Something
yes,
like that, but
then yes, you're covered under emergency preparedness for emergency circumstances or tree work. If you have a hurricane and you lose a massive amount of trees, you can hire somebody to do that and it not be under it. This is basically your everyday vendors. These are your week in, week out vendors.
okay, I wasn't sure because like in our example was, we had a common area where it's required to be cleared at a certain time, but it couldn't be done because of it was too wet to get a tractor in there type thing. But by the time it got to that, there had been some illegal dumping. So it came to basically about 10% of our budget when we had to have it done within a 30-day period. So, that was the case there. So I wasn't sure. I just wanted to be to be sure of that.
If you are ever in a situation where you aren't sure like that, when you call the first company that you call, also call one more and just get a price from them. And
Okay.
that way, if a homeowner ever comes back to you and questions you on it, look, we went with the first one. It was an emergency. We had to get it done and we have another price. So if we ever need to in the future, remember that the whole purpose for bidding, did that answer your question, John?
Yes, I understand the concept too. We're doing our due diligence to make sure that we're proceeding as best, again, our fiscal responsibility.
And that's exactly right. It all comes down to a fiduciary responsibility to the homeowners.
Right.
It's every time, and we all have that guy. We all have that landscaper that you know them, their kids, they've been your landscaper for 30 years. If their rates are going up and you're wondering whether you're getting the best rate, there's nothing wrong to send out an RFP. Always send, by the way, even if you aren't sure you're going to keep your current vendor, ask them for an RFP. You don't have to accept it. But you don't want to leave anybody with a bad taste, even if you don't plan on bringing them back. The last thing you want, and I'll tell you this from experience too, the last thing you want is for your pool vendor to not know that you're getting bids and then another pool vendor come in the pool to take a look at it while he's still under contract. So it just make sure that your current vendor knows that you're getting bids, that it's nothing personal, that they're looking out for the best interest of the homeowners, and then feel free to send them out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Another good question, John. Thank you. Harley, I've got some questions that are coming in here on chat. Do you know specifically where the Florida statute regarding the 10% limit is found, or is that something that we can get the attendees?
That came from Catherine Hurst Miller. So wherever, attorney Catherine Hurst Miller with Wright and KCPA in New Smyrna Beach. That's a shout out to Catherine because she is the legal counsel for several of my associations. It's in the statute in there, but if you, I believe she speaks at a lot of these. Is she going to be there at the conferences coming up, Diane?
She is, yes, and also something that I just do if you go online, if you go to your Flutter statute and you hit the search bar or Control S and you put in 10%, it'll show you everywhere on the page it says 10%, so you should be able to find that pretty quickly. Yeah. Also, and thanks for the shout out to Catherine, Harley. Another question that came in is it the vendor's responsibility to pull permits or the condos, and who is ultimately responsible if this isn't done?
Okay, great question. And this is no different than a general question for homeowners. We'll use condominiums. I have a condominium that's made up of 4 buildings. and each building has 50 units. So these are four individual roofs. If and when they get ready to replace those roofs, I'm sure in the bid for that roofer, it will say that the roofer is going to pull the permits, and I'm sure it will have the price he's going to pay to pull them. It is his job, if he says he's going to pull them, to pull them. If he does not, it's the responsibility of the association to make sure he does them. If he doesn't pull them, then and something happens, you know, it may eventually come back on the association. And I've saw that happen before, and I won't say what roofer it is, but I've had a roofer replace a bunch of roofs, and it was a lot of roofs within this community. And then when he was done, there were a few of the roofs that the permits were opened and not closed. So then we didn't actually realize it until one of those units was for sale. And then it came back on the title work that there was still an open permit for the roof. So you should always have the vendor doing the work pull the permit. It should be part of what they're bidding for. And it is their responsibility to do it, but you don't want it to come back on you. So it's a-okay to, if it is something that's permitting, you're going to replace your pool pump with heater, and it requires a permit to replace that in the city of Daytona Beach. It's a-okay to ask the vendor replacing it, yes, we will accept your work. Upon last payment, we need receipt of the closed permits. We need the NOCs so that you have that on record with your management company.
Okay, great. And these are all great questions. Who else? I know everybody is on mute, so you should be able to unmute yourself now. So if anybody wants to pop in, if we get one that goes over one another, that's okay. One of you will just keep talking.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Edwards. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just want to make a comment that the information that was provided is excellent. I wish I had had it 6 months ago, just a little behind, but I really appreciate, I did not get the name of the presenter, and I just wanted to say thank you, and what a great presentation it was. Very concise.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for those that popped in at the end or in the middle, we are videotaping this. So we put all of our videos for our educational programs online. The best resource for board members is Southern State's website. And there's a news section. And the news section's updated weekly, and you can go backwards and see a lot of different videos from previous education. Also, it goes over any programs that are coming up. So the Southern State's website is, and I'll type it to everyone, but it's very simple. It's the acronym of our company, Southern States Management Group. So it's ssmgfl.com. Very simple. And then right at the top, there's a news button, and we're constantly updating that to help educate board members and to invite you to different programs that we put on. So, are there any other questions or comments? I know that there was a question that Colleen, somebody asked if they had, if it wasn't related to budget. My question is regarding the Florida statute, which require the condo association to allow an owner to install an EV charging station in their assigned parking space. Have any of the associations you represented had experience with this? Great question. I actually just
I missed the first part of the question. What was it about assigned parking?
It says Florida statute, which requires the condo association to allow, is there anything in the Florida statute which requires the condo association to allow an owner to install an EV charging station in their assigned parking space?
There's nothing that I know of. I would have that conversation with your legal counsel if you're trying to object to them doing so. But if it's something that a homeowner is asking for because it's homeowner X that's asking for it because because they are purchasing an electric car and they want an electric charging station. If that's only for their vehicle, it's perfectly acceptable to have them pay the electric on it, to have it hooked up to theirs. If the association is willing to do so because they know in the future there's going to be more people with electric cars, that's perfectly okay. But I would talk to your legal counsel on it if it's something that you don't want.
Good question. Anybody else? Speak now or forever hold your peace. No. Okay, well, again, Harley, thank you. As always, we so appreciate you and your education and your time. And all of you volunteers, we thank you for being the community leaders in your associations. And we invite you to come back to these educational programs. So please be watching your emails and keep that website in mind for the future. And I will be sending this video out to all in an email so that you can forward it to your other board members as well. So if there aren't any further questions, we'll say good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everyone. Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
You.